To kick off this part of the afternoon sessions, we have Mark from Dataseat, which is also part of Verve Group, who's going to be talking about understanding SKAN 4.0 and its implications. So do we have Mark here?
Hey everybody, my name is Mark Menery. I'm the VP of Sales at Dataseat, and we are going to talk about SKAN today. Specifically SKAN 4.0 and some changes that Apple gave to us in Q4 of 2022. Before we go into that, just a little bit of background to add some credibility. I've been in the performance advertising space for about 13 years now. Dating back to 2010, I got my start at a company called JumpTap. We were one of the first mobile ad networks, acquired by a company called Millennial Media in 2013. So I've worked with gaming, performance advertisers, UA teams pretty much my entire career. Now Dataseat is a privacy-first mobile DSP, focused on performance, focused on gaming. And we say privacy first because this wasn't a pivot for us. We were founded on the premise that Apple would deprecate IDFA, that Google would eventually follow suit. Okay? So we were one of the few companies that was celebrating when ATT and SKAN and some of these things were announced. So, clicker does not work, or does it? Wrong way. Perfect. All right, good. So we're going to do a SKAN overview, talk about some assumptions and implications, talk about different versions of SKAN and why they matter and why we have to pay attention to them. Talk about some SKAN basics. So, what do certain things mean, some definitions, terminology. And then 4.0 changes. So what are some of the gifts that Apple gave to us with SKAN 4.0? And we'll do a summary, conclusions, all that good stuff at the end. So for starters, let's talk about what is SKAN and why it was created. So SKAN was created to provide private and accurate attribution to advertisers without revealing information of the user. Simply put, SKAN is Apple's attribution framework for mobile app install campaigns. Older versions of SKAN matter. So these are things we have to pay attention to, things we have to look out for. They're going to come up as we're optimizing campaigns. Probabilistic attribution is still the go-to method. The full effects of SKAN have certainly not been felt yet. Privacy thresholds. So you can't talk about SKAN without talking about privacy thresholds. These were loosened up a little bit in Q4 of 2022. We'll go more into detail on that. And then what are some gifts that Apple gave us, right? What are some things that we got with SKAN 4.0? Well, we got some things that gave us the ability to do better LTV tracking, better optimization, and optimize across more channels. But none of this actually matters unless Apple fully enforces SKAN. But we believe that's a when and not an if. So, this beautiful painting here, this is a lifetime of a SKAN impression. Everyone can take a breath of relief because we're not going to talk about this in much detail. If anyone wants more information on this, we have a really good podcast that our CEO and founder did, David Phillipson. I can send the information after. But I want to jump into older versions of SKAN and why they matter, okay? So they matter because of this graph. So if you look at this graph, this is an example of a campaign that ran over the course of a few weeks. X-axis represents time here, Y-axis represents number of installs, okay? And the different colors here represent different versions of SKAN, previous versions of SKAN. So these are coming up in campaigns as we're optimizing and as we're running these campaigns. And each version of SKAN gave us something different. SKAN 2.0 gave us privacy-preserving ad attribution. 2.2 gave us custom ad attribution. SKAN 3.0 gave us something called loser postbacks, and then we got most of our positive changes in SKAN 4.0. SKAN versions don't update overnight, and they also don't update like iOS rollouts. So with an iOS rollout, Apple pushes it out to all the devices, all the users, and typically within 2 to 3 months you have 80% plus adoption. SKAN, and specifically SKAN 4.0, there's a lot more things involved. So first of all, the advertised app needs to be on 16.1 or higher. The SSP has to have the latest version of the SDK, and then the publishers have to be on that version of the SDK. The ad network, the DSP bidding on the impression, has to have their specific SK ad network signature updated, and then the user who actually sees the impression has to be on the minimum version of iOS that accepts that latest version of SKAN. So as you can see, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Now, when we get a SKAN postback, what are some of the things that we're looking for? What are some of the things that are important? Well, first of all, we want to know the version, right? The version does matter. So this is a 4.0 postback, right? You say it says 4.0, pretty simple, straightforward, right? If this was 3.0 or a previous postback, some things might be named differently. There might be some fields missing, right? But this is a 4.0 postback. So all of these fields are arguably important, but I want to focus on the most important ones, okay? So source identifier. Source identifier is a variable that means something to the advertiser, okay? It means something to the advertiser. It's something that the ad network or your DSP partner sets in order to help us optimize. Source app ID, this is where the conversion came from. So was it an Angry Birds app? Was it, Solitaire? Like, where did the conversion come from? If this was to say source domain, it would have been what mobile website did this come from? And that's another gift we got from Apple. And then conversion value. What was the conversion? Okay, was it an install? Was it a 99-cent purchase? Was it a certain level complete? What was that conversion? So we're going to go through all of these in more detail. Let's talk about high-level changes with SKAN 4.0 and sort of what we got. Well, first and foremost, we got more visibility. So something called crowd anonymity came. It was introduced, and it sort of loosened up privacy thresholds, okay? We got better optimization. So Apple gave us more source identifiers and more conversion values in order to help us better optimize. We got improved LTV tracking. We have the ability now to actually get more postbacks on our campaign and something called the lock window that we can enable. And we have more inventory to optimize off of. So SKAN 4.0 gave us web to app attribution, so now we can attribute conversions across mobile web. So we're going to go through all of these in more detail. We're going to start with more visibility. So we said privacy threshold quite a few times. What is a privacy threshold? Why was it created? It was created by Apple to ensure that advertisers wouldn't be able to identify a user. Okay? So it was sort of like all or nothing at all. If you didn't reach a number of installs or conversions in a 24-hour period on your campaign, you wouldn't get back certain information. It was kind of like if you weren't this tall, you couldn't ride the roller coaster. Okay? So basically, there was 3 main fields that you wouldn't get back that are subject to a privacy threshold. Okay? If you didn't get enough installs within that period, you wouldn't receive back this information. Now, crowd anonymity was introduced, and this sort of tiered off privacy thresholds for us, okay? So basically, if you had a low number of crowd anonymity, or less crowd anonymity, you'd get less information back. If you had more, you would get more campaign information, and if you were at the highest level of crowd anonymity, you would get the most information back from Apple. So I want to talk about how this plays a part with source identifiers and sort of what these are in more detail. So source identifiers were previously referred to as campaign IDs in previous versions of SKAN. These are specifically set by your ad network or your DSP partners in order to help us optimize. So these variables actually mean something to us, okay? You want to think of these in 3 parts. There's upper part 1, which the 5 represents, upper digit 2, which the 7 represents, and then the lower digits, which is that 39. So prior to SKAN 4.0, we only had the lower digits to work with. We only had that 39. So SKAN 4.0, we got upper digit 1 and upper digit 2 in order to help us optimize. But what are these and how do we use them and all that good stuff? Well, first of all, that 39 represents one of 100 variables. Okay, so these are called the lower digits. You could set this to be 100 line items, 100 publisher apps, really whatever it is to help you optimize. Upper digit 2, the 7, represents one of 10 variables, 0 through 9. This could be 10 exchanges, 10 geos. And then the third variable, upper digit 1, is again one of 10 variables. Okay, so this could be 10 creatives, for example. Now, crowd anonymity, right, or these privacy threshold levels, play a part with source identifiers. So let's say that you have 5 installs in a campaign within a 24-hour period. Apple might say, okay, you're at a level where we're going to give you those lower 2 digits. So you know the conversion came from that 39th line item. In example 2, you might have been at that middle level of crowd anonymity. Okay, so Apple might say, fine, we're going to give you the lower digits and that upper digit 2. So you know that the conversion came from that 39th line item in that 7th geo area that we set. In example 3, maybe you hit that highest tier of crowd anonymity, so Apple's going to say, sure, we're going to give you back the 39, the 7, and the 5. So now you know it came from that 39th line item in that 7th geo area from that 5th creative. So the more crowd anonymity we have, or the higher the level, the more information we're going to get back. Okay, now we're going to talk about conversion values, another gift that we got from Apple. Okay, so we got more conversion values in SKAN 4.0. So in previous versions of SKAN, we were given what's called the fine-grained conversion value. This was up to 64 variables. You could set 0 through 63 to really be whatever you want. And you didn't have to use all those variables, okay? So it could be an install, a certain level complete, a 99-cent purchase, a subscription, whatever it is that you want. Doesn't matter, okay? You had up to 64 variables to set. That was called the fine-grained conversion value. In SKAN 4.0, Apple introduced a new conversion value called the coarse-grained conversion value. Now, this is a low, a medium, or a high. And the idea is to take those fine-grained conversion values and bucket them into the coarse grain, okay? Now, you might be saying, it's a fair question, Apple really didn't give us much here, right? It's less granular. So we had the fine grain, what does the coarse grain really do for us? Well, the coarse grain conversion value, you can take the fine grain and bucket it into the coarse grain, but also it's held to a lower privacy threshold or a lower level of crowd anonymity than the fine grain. So you might be at a level where you didn't hit enough installs or conversions within a 24-hour period within your campaign to receive back any information at all. Okay, no conversion information will come through. But you might be at a level now, in this next example, where at least you got enough conversions where Apple says, okay, we're gonna give you the coarse grain. So at least you know now that your conversion was a high conversion value. Okay? And in the third example, if you were at that highest tier of crowd anonymity, Apple may give you back that 42, and you know the 42 is directly related to a $39.99 purchase. Okay, so I want to talk about LTV impact for a second. In previous versions of SKAN, the advertiser would receive 1 postback. Now in SKAN 4.0, we're given up to 3 postbacks. So the way to think about these is in different windows, okay? Any user activity that occurs within that first window, day 0 through day 2, you'll get sent back that information in postback 1. Any user activity that occurs in day 3 through 7, you'll receive that information back in postback 2. And any user activity that occurs within day 8 through day 35, you'll get that back in postback 3 at the end of each of these respective windows, okay? Any user activity that happens after day 35, you won't get that back, it's lost. Now, conversion values and postbacks. Postback 1 can, it doesn't mean it's going to, but it can contain the fine-grained conversion value if you're at a high enough level of privacy threshold. So in this example, postback 1 has a 4, and you know a 4 is directly related to the way you set up your campaign to a 99-cent purchase, okay? Now, postbacks 2 and 3 can only contain the coarse conversion value. Okay, so in postback 2, you might receive a low. In postback 3, you might get back a high. But regardless of the level of crowd anonymity that you're at, regardless of the tier, if you're at that highest tier, you can only receive back these coarse-grained conversion values. Okay, lock window. So this is important too. Apple basically said you can enable a lock window. So instead of receiving conversion values at the end, or instead of receiving anything at the end of the postback window, you can enable a lock window and say, I want to receive that information back right away. So you can say, this conversion is valuable enough to me that I want to enable a lock window in each of these windows and get that back right away. Okay, so this slide is slightly different than the original one that I showed you with that postback. Pretty straightforward though. Source domain replaces source app ID. So I had said that we're able to do web to app attribution on Safari. Okay, so this said source app ID in the first slide that I showed. That means that the conversion came from an app. Source domain means it came from a mobile website, okay? So it is specifically Safari only, but roughly 90% of iPhone users' browser of choice is Safari, so this is a win. So now with SKAN 4.0, we can do mobile web to app attribution across Safari only, which is definitely a win. Okay, quick summary. So we believe SKAN is inevitable. It's coming. It's going to be here to stay. Best thing you can do is talk about it, educate your partners, talk to your MMPs, your DSPs, really all your partners out there. We do believe in previous versions of SKAN that they're going to be around for a while. They exist. Based on what we showed in terms of how SKAN updates, these are going to be around when we're optimizing campaigns. We do believe that Apple is going to continue to make improvements to SKAN over time. Okay, so positive iterations are going to continue to come. So in summary, SKAN 4.0, we got more visibility. So crowd anonymity sort of loosened up privacy thresholds for us, which was a huge win. We're able to now do better optimization. With more source identifiers, right, and more conversion values, we're able to better optimize our campaigns. We have now improved LTV tracking with those 2 additional postbacks that we get and the ability to enable that lock window and more inventory. So now that we can do web to app attribution, right, we can run campaigns across Safari and attribute those conversions properly. So just quick plug on references. Obviously, Dataseat internally. Apple had some really great videos and articles that I referenced. And then certainly Apps Flyer and Singular and other MMPs out there. Really, really great reads. All right, everyone. My name is Mark Menery. I'm VP of Sales at Dataseat. I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much. Any questions? Questions?
Yeah, we have time for like 1 or 2 quick questions. Does anyone have any questions? Just put your hand up real high, so. Everyone's got a little shy and all this stuff.
Yep.
Any idea what the new pricing thresholds are in terms of volume?
No. So in terms of the levels or tiers of crowd anonymity, I don't think anyone really knows what those are. I don't think anyone's ever going to either, to be honest.
Any other questions? No? Another round of applause for Mark, please.
Thank you, everyone.